Hi and welcome to Game Domain. And for this video, I will be talking about a game that was ported to the Switch in 1 week, and I'll explain more about the game in a few seconds, and also what this means for future games and how developers will support the Switch. So the game is called Snake Pass. It uses Unreal Engine 4. It has pretty nice graphics, and it's an indie game. It's not a big AAA game. They were able to get it running. I'm not saying they patched it and everything, but the fact that they got it running and they were able to play it on the Switch in 1 week is pretty good. And I've never heard of this before, even for games that 2D games like pixel games, pixel art games, which are obviously usually easier to port. But a game like this that has interesting mechanics, it's 3D, Unreal Engine 4, on Xbox One, Steam, PS4, and now the Switch. It's very impressive that they were able to do that. And since it's an indie game, it can't have the biggest team working on it. Like if it was a AAA game, that's a different story, but it would still be a big story, even though the games are bigger, they would still have a lot of people. But anyway, the fact that they were able to do this is huge, and this means that the Switch is obviously easy to develop for as long as it's basic, no motion controls, nothing like that. Besides that, it must be easy to develop for, which means companies like Ubisoft, EA will want to develop for the Switch as long as it's in their favor, as long as they're making money. Let's say Ubisoft wanted to make a port of For Honor to the Switch, but they were like, we're not sure if this will make money on the Switch. We're not sure if we'll end up earning a good percentage of money on this game. So what they could do is say, okay, so here's how much it costs to port it to the Switch and how much it costs to produce the game, because they would still have to make a cartridge of it. Even though the digital era is coming, everyone knows it, which I don't really like because I prefer to have the actual disc or cartridge. But anyway, it wouldn't cost them as much money if it doesn't take them a long time to port it. Could it take other games a long time to port? Yes, but sometimes no. Like Mass Effect Andromeda, I thought this was a good example. The developers aren't really planning on making it for the Switch, but they said if our fans want it, we'll make it on the Switch. And the thing is, if they were to port that game, which is a big game, to the Switch, and the Switch wasn't the easiest to develop for, it could take a very long time. We might not get it until mid to maybe even late 2018. But if they can port it by, let's say, fall 2017, then it can get a lot of sales because Mass Effect 3 on the Wii U sold really bad. But Mass Effect Andromeda could sell well because people would want to play this on the go because there are a lot of games people would prefer to play on the go, and they just don't have the time to sit down and play these games. So this could work well in the Switch's favor as long as it doesn't take a long time. And for indie developers, it's even better because the indie developers usually do not have huge games. I'm not saying in all cases, like No Man's Sky, which I guess was a big game, but it flopped. Um, but if there was a game on the scale of No Man's Sky and it was good, that was coming to the Switch, it could take longer. But a game like a pixel art game, maybe like Undertale or Stardew Valley, which is already coming to the Switch, if they wanted to port that to the Switch so people can play it on the go, because indie games, a lot of them, and I'm not saying all of them, are time waster games or just games you don't really sit down and play. Especially Stardew Valley, because it has a lot of traits that a mobile game has, and a lot of people just won't sit down and play for a few hours. But if someone's on the go, it's a good game to play. So what they could do is port it to the Switch, make sure it's running, make sure it's not glitchy or anything, and then they can just sell it digitally. And I don't know if there's any fee you have to pay, but I know it's not. And the development kit, which is like $100, which is not that bad, to help a game. So they can port it, and then the Switch would be like the indie game console. It would be the game you want to buy indie games on, and it also some third party games. Like the 3DS is known for its RPGs. Like you don't buy a 3DS for open world games. I don't even know if there are any. I'm sure there are probably some smaller ones. But you buy a 3DS either because you're a Nintendo fan, if you just like some of the games, like you like Mario, you like Luigi, and games like Legend of Zelda, and you're not really a huge Nintendo fan, but you like those games and you'll buy a 3DS, or if you just want to play some games on the go. But also, there is that hardcore audience that isn't a Nintendo fan that still bought the 3DS because of its grand scale of RPGs. Like, yeah, you got the Mario and Luigi games, but yeah, that doesn't appeal to everyone. But of course, there's going to be Pokemon. There's Dragon Quest games. There's some new games like some I forgot what it's called. Like Oasis something. But there's a lot of RPGs on the 3DS, and it does have a decent amount of indie games, so it can attract the people who usually would not buy a 3DS just to play those RPGs, because there's a lot of them. You obviously don't have to play it at home. You can play them anywhere, even though a lot of RPGs work better for sit down and play. So you would be able to do that, which is with the Switch. I'm not talking about RPGs, but with indie games, so it could work very well in the Switch's favor. And also, the 3DS was not powerful, so a lot of developers still did not want to port it games because they would have to make it a lower resolution because it's only 240p, and a lot of developers just did not want to. But the 3DS still has a decent amount of indie games, and a lot of them are made for Wii U and 3DS. But the Switch, I'm sure, can handle the majority of indie games. Like the Wii U probably could have handled No Man's Sky. Um, Pretty much a similar performance as the PS4 since it's not a huge. I guess it's not like a demanding game, especially on PC. It does not take a powerful PC to run it. So yeah, the Switch could have a lot of potential with third-party developers if it's this easy to develop for it. It will have like a domino effect. This developer ports it to the Switch and sells it within a couple months, they make a lot of money. Then this next developer sees it, same thing. But then it reaches developers like Ubisoft and EA, and 2K, and then they're like, you know what? These indie developers are making a lot of money, and they don't have to spend that much to port it. You know what? What if we do the same thing? And I think this can work at least until the next consoles are released. Then they'll be like, we could make it on here, but it would take a lot of downgrading, and we'd be better off not to. So yeah, the Switch, it's going to lose third-party support, or at least mainstream third-party support. Once the PS5 and next Xbox are released. I'm not talking about the Scorpio, like the next full console. Um, so yeah, the Switch could have a lot of third-party support until like 2018 or 2019. Uh, and I mean like late 2018. So whenever the next consoles are released, so the Switch could get all that support for a long time. A lot of people will buy the Switch, and then they'll start to get Nintendo games. They'll start to get the third-party games, or the indie games. There'll be a huge selection of games. Like the Wii U did not have a lot of games at all. Even the Wii didn't have. You know, the Wii actually had a decent amount. I'm thinking of like the GameCube and Nintendo 64, which did not have that many games. And even the Wii, I think it had less games than the competitors, but it still sold a lot more. A lot of people forget they're like, oh, Nintendo isn't competitive. They don't make games that people want to buy. They don't make consoles people want to buy. But the Wii, it ended its lifespan in 2012, and it sold a lot more than 360 and PS3. So people need to remember that. It wasn't even that long ago. It was long ago when it released, but still. So anyway, that's what I think this means for the Switch if the Switch is that easy to develop for. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye.